Special thanks to the K Family Foundation, lead underwriters for Mosaic. Hello, my name is Barbara Kay, and on behalf of the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, I'd like to welcome you to our program, Mosaic. Our special guest on Mosaic today is the president of the Lincoln Center for Performing Arts, author, lecturer, Dr. Reynold Levy. We'll be back with our guest and our program right after this brief message.
The Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County makes so much possible every day.
Serving tens of thousands of kosher meals to seniors and families through food pantries, the Jewish Hunger Response, holiday meals, and on-site meal programs.
Operating the Jewish Community Assistance Network in 6 local communities to provide health, wellness, and social programs to more than 2,000 seniors.
But we need your help. Volunteer your time. Pledge your support. Make a difference. Thank you for your generous support.
Welcome to Mosaic and to Florida,
Thank
Reynold.
you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Listen, your book, Yours for the Asking, is terrific, okay?
Thank you.
I tell you, the term is so interesting, and also I like the fact that you put a pie on the front. It means that fundraising is as easy as eating a piece of pie?
Yeah, it's actually kosher too.
It is a kosher pie?
Absolutely.
Okay. You know, the idea of philanthropy, I think the word was coined 2,500 years ago in Greece, and it means to love being human. And essentially it was the beginning of civilization, literally, but it's not easy. People are intimidated about asking for money, even if it's for a remarkable cause. And your book gives you a lot of answers. Okay, let's go 101. How do you begin asking people for money, for charity, for philanthropy, for a wonderful cause? How do you begin?
You know, when I was 27, I was hired as the executive director of the 92nd Street Y, and I asked the president of the Federation of Jewish Philanthropies, another young man named Larry Buttenwieser, exactly that question.
Really?
And I'll never forget how he answered me. He said, be sure that you are talking to a donor who has an interest in your cause or your institution. And then look over the donor's right shoulder and imagine what his or her gift could do, what it could make happen. And then you will persuasively and unflinchingly ask for a specific sum of money, let's say $50,000. And when the donor says, Reynold, I'm afraid the best I can do is 25, say to the donor, I assume you mean for each of the next 2 years. And what Larry was saying was the key to fundraising. Be sure that you've researched your prospect and you know that there's a relationship between the prospect and the cause. Be sure that you can concisely and compellingly state the reason for the gift, and then do so with confidence and with a real belief in the cause. Don't be intimidated, don't be shy, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, you know, it's so critical. I started that in the beginning thinking about it. You know, you realize that philanthropy is probably one of the major forces that creates the extraordinary quality and opportunity of life here in this country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been, if you name a social movement after World War II in this country, whether it's the environmental movement or the women's movement or the peace movement, environmental movement, the disease-specific causes, at their epicenter is philanthropy. At their epicenter is our voluntary sector. And it's so unusual because in most of the world, government is the key player, and there are relatively few mature non-government organizations. And we in the United States benefit from this extraordinary variety and choice of social services, of health services, of cultural services, because of the existence of this vibrant nonprofit sector.
Yeah, you know something, it's interesting, you talked about the government and the opportunity. This country is so great because you really are encouraged to be philanthropic. I mean, they give you tax opportunities. You give a gift, for instance, I remember speaking to somebody from Switzerland. You give a gift to a philanthropy in Switzerland, for instance, if you get $100, you have to give a gift in kind to the government. So that it really isn't, they don't encourage this kind of opportunity there.
Right. I remember raising money from a Frenchman who said, I asked for $5 million, and the Frenchman said, you know, Reynold, in the United States, if you ask for $5 million, the donor would get a 30% reduction in their taxes, so it's much more expensive for me. And I said, oh, I'll give you a 30% reduction. Let's take 30% off the $5 million. Be happy to do that for you. So I think the instinct to give is strong. I think the tax deductibility helps. But I'm pretty confident that even if we're eliminated, going back to the point you originally made, philanthropy is such a strong instinct. Giving is such a strong instinct. I think people would give less, but they would give even without that incentive.
Yeah, you say it's like, and when I read your book, which I'm going to point out again, I really advise everybody watching, if they want to find out the opportunity and the way to do good, this really gives you every point. It's really amazing. And we'll go through it. But frankly, you still have to get over the fear of asking for money. And you have to do research. When you talk about doing research on the person that you're asking, you have to understand what you're asking for. In other words, the philanthropy, the involvement, you have to understand to be able to respond.
And find the intersection between that person's interests and your needs. Where do they come from? What schools did they graduate from? What's their relationship to their spouse?
In other words, for the donor, when you ask that person, you have to know what their feelings are to begin with.
In fact, that's the beginning of the conversation. I never talk about the cause I'm raising money from first. Maybe that's for coffee. I want to learn about the donor. I'm enthusiastic about learning about this person. What's their occupation? How's business? How's the family? How are the kids? What's going on? And really coming to know the donor reasonably well so that by the time you do ask, you're asking for the right range, the right kind of figure. You don't ask for something which is excessive or out of bounds. You've got a sense of what the donor is about if it's a first-time encounter.
Reynold, what happens if they say no?
Well, no is the beginning of a conversation. They couldn't say no. They don't mean no. They mean maybe I shouldn't be the one to have asked them. Maybe it should have been a peer, a professional peer. Or this has been a bad quarter for me. I've had some financial setbacks. Come another time. That's
so
what
do
they
you say?
really mean. I thank them for the time and for the attention. I ask them whether or not they're willing to have me keep them abreast of what's going on at whatever cause I'm associated with. And then I report back to whoever is closest to them the content of the conversation, and we find another opportunity. Because and I really, truly believe this, we are doing an enormous favor for the donor. The donor receives enormous satisfaction from giving to a cause which takes them out of themselves. And I often say, I guarantee three things. a donor to the cause I'm associated now with now, Lincoln Center, will sleep better, live longer, and
There's a place in heaven.
and have an unobstructed pathway to heaven. Now, if
No,
a donor has those three benefits,
My
why
goodness.
shouldn't we? People could get angry at me for not asking them for support.
You know something, it's interesting. I always feel the same way. I mean, I'm very involved in the Federation, as you know. And when I call a donor, I really do feel like you do, Reynold. I feel like I'm giving them an opportunity. And if they, and it's, for me, it's like almost like a religious experience, because I'm trying to bring them to my world, and I want them to feel as wonderful about what I do, you know, about giving.
And those of us who are fortunate, we're in comfortable circumstances, maybe compared with our parents, certainly compared with others in the United States and around the world. We've hopefully taken care of our children. We feel reasonably secure. It's time to move from professional success to social consequence. It's time to feel and have the ability to really help others, to really make a difference in our own communities.
You know, you write in the book something that's interesting, which I never thought about, that more people give to philanthropy than vote.
That's correct.
Why?
Give and volunteer than vote. It's really amazing. Well, in part, the good part of that is that there's been an enormous growth in giving. We're giving, Americans are now giving over $300 billion a year to philanthropy. And the size of the nonprofit sector, it's huge. It's 7% of the gross domestic product. It's $1.4 trillion. 1 out of every 7 white-collar workers works in for a nonprofit institution. In almost every major city in the country, in New York, nonprofits, 10 of the 20 largest firms in New York City are nonprofit institutions, hospitals, university, cultural institutions. So they become powerful. Some of those nonprofit institutions preceded the founding of the United States. You know, Harvard was created 100 years, 140 years before the United States was created.
It's incredible.
So, so part of that is terrific, and Americans volunteer and Americans give. The part that's disappointing is that the amount of voting and voter participation has declined.
Yeah.
Now, most recently, in the last presidential
Picked up a
election,
little bit.
it picked up a little bit, and I hope that will continue.
Yeah, but the first thing that you have to do is get an appointment with somebody. All right? How do you go about doing that?
So one of the, I'll tell you a little story about exactly what's going on at Lincoln Center now. I was able to persuade a donor to buy the Big Apple Circus tent for Lincoln Center's employees as a way to say thank you to all of our employees. And they would invite their children, their aunts and uncles, their parents, to come to Lincoln Center. And I'm talking about maintenance workers and security guards and all the people who make Lincoln Center work, in addition to our executive staff. We reserved 200 seats for the secretaries and administrative assistants of donors, who we want to say thank you to. They are the gatekeepers. So one of my rules in getting appointments is dial your own phone. Because the people whom you want to speak to and have an appointment with are the secretaries, the receptionists, those who really control the calendars of their bosses. And if you express an interest in them, you ask them how they are and you mean it, you remember their name, you just make some casual conversation, you are far more likely to get that appointment and even learn something about who you want to see. Another rule of mine is I see a donor at their convenience, whenever they wish. Weekends, holidays, doesn't matter. And I see them wherever they want. So I'm always going to their place of work, to the place where they'd like to have breakfast, place where they'd like to have lunch. Make it as easy as possible. So if they have 20 minutes, that's terrific. And if they have a meal together, that's even better.
Yeah, well, on that note, we'll take a break. We'll be back with the remainder of our program right after this brief message.